Yo, what's going on, guys? It is Foxy298 here. Welcome back to a brand new video for you guys today here on the channel. Today we are back with another episode of the debate for Formula 1. You guys kind of enjoyed it actually last week. You thought it was pretty good. And you guys wanted to see this formally made into some sort of series. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And potentially in the future, I'll probably get some more people on to join in the debate and try and talk about things in Formula 1. The only difference with this sort of version of the debate is I'm pretty much going to be speaking specifically about very key elements to the Grand Prix weekend. I'm not going to go and do like a full podcast of the entire weekend. I just want to specifically talk about the main talking points of the debate. And but I'll go through the weekend in terms of the rundown anyway. So the Japanese Grand Prix happened last weekend, and it was a very good Japanese Grand Prix actually. I did actually enjoy it. I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10 if I was going to rate it out of 10. I'll probably do that for all of them. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Had lots of good action, especially at the start of the race. There just wasn't a lot at the front. There was a bit at the start, which you could see on my screen, but there wasn't necessarily loads after that, really. Hamilton was just off on his own little merry-go-world. Bottas had a little bit of a tussle with Verstappen, but nothing really came of it. Verstappen and the Ferraris, though, got very interesting. But it was the midfield that was really awesome to watch. And if that was at the front of the field, then we'd be saying how much of a great race it was. But it wasn't at the front. So, yeah. But Hamilton came across the line. He won the Japanese Grand Prix. Lights to flag. Simple as that for him. Bottas came through second place. Did a great job. Stuck with Hamilton, and then eventually after he had a bit of blistering on his medium tyres, that's when Hamilton pulled away and Bottas lost out. Otherwise, Bottas kept up very well with Hamilton, and they definitely controlled the race perfectly to the Mercedes duo. Verstappen came along in a hard-fought third place ahead of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo, ahead of Kimi Raikkonen and then Sebastian Vettel, and that pretty much means that the championship, well, it's over now. We kind of know it is, but obviously you always have to still say never. There is a 67 or is it 68 point gap, something like that, and there's still 100 points on offer, so you never know. But you'd have to have 2 DNFs and like a 6th place from Hamilton in 3 of the 4 races. I can't really see that happening considering he's had 1 DNF in like 50 races. So yeah, but anyway, moving on then. So the debate for today is what went wrong for Ferrari in Japan. There was a lot of things that went wrong for Ferrari, and it's been the same case throughout the entire season. But there's been a lot that's gone wrong with Ferrari. And also as well, we're going to be discussing the events. And to stop FOM potentially abusing my life, I've actually brought these clips that I've just got off of YouTube, and I've just put them into my editing software. So if you want to know, I use VideoPad NCH software, if that's what you really want to know. Nice and simple. If you're a person that's never done any form of video editing before, I highly recommend this software because it's very easy and simple to use. Eventually I'm going to be upgrading probably to Sony Vegas very soon. But at the moment, it's just nice and simple. And if you're new to creating videos, this is the perfect one to get you started on it. And eventually I'm going to be doing a video on a full setup guide and how I make my videos and how I edit them and how they go about, and just show you the whole process of creating a video. So that'll be coming out very soon as well. But first of all then, we need to talk about, so what went wrong for Ferrari in Japan? It started off with qualifying. Qualifying was a nightmare for Ferrari. They qualified in P4 and P8. Of course, I know Vettel qualified in P9, but Ocon got a 3-place grid penalty, so that promoted Vettel to P8. A lot of people are stating that this was fully the Ferrari strategist's fault for Ferrari having an awful qualifying session. And unfortunately, I actually completely disagree with all of it. If we go to qualifying, I don't even think I'm going to be eligible to bring it up. But I'll bring it up anyway, because I might as well. But at the end of the day, for me, Ferrari didn't really get it wrong, in my opinion. I just feel like, in a way, it was a bit of a mixture of both. That's where the biggest problem lied. I'm going to have to remember to not only turn the volume off on my screen, but I'm going to have to turn the volume off for... Oh, it's there. No, I don't want the circuit guide. I don't want the circuit guide. I want that. That's what I kind of want to have.
Good morning, everyone.
So anyway, so this is obviously the qualifying session here, and if we go towards Q3, I don't want Ricciardo screaming. That doesn't really help me here. I don't want you screaming, Daniel. I know you scream a lot, but it is what it is. But obviously that's the end of Q2, etc, etc. Now into Q3 here, the 2 Ferraris went out on the intermediate tyres. Now it was a rain-affected qualifying session, and it caused a couple of problems. So in this rain-affected quali, we saw a lot of drivers just struggling. And at the end of Q2, it got to the point where the weather conditions were just as bad that the dry tyres weren't working anymore, and it was pretty much time for the intermediates. Now, a lot of people are criticising Ferrari's strategists once again because, of course, they fitted both Vettel and Raikkonen onto these intermediate tyres. I'm just going to zoom in on the full screen there. It's not even playing, so might as well. So they're criticising Vettel and Raikkonen for and the team for using these intermediate tyres. But there's two things to consider here. Number one, at the end of Q2, the track was undrivable on the dry tyres. So there was a reason for people to potentially have a go at the intermediate tyres. Number two, the team, yes. Now, to start off with, both Vettel and Raikkonen were told by the team, we think we should go out on the intermediate tyres. Now, is this Ferrari's fault? Not really, no. You know, anyone can go out there and think, this might be that, and people have different interpretations. If Ferrari went out on the intermediates and Mercedes went out on the dries, and the intermediates were better at that time, you'd then criticise Mercedes because they've got the wrong tyre choice. And it happened at the Hungarian Grand Prix, if we remember. Vettel went out in Q2 on the intermediate tyres. He was the only person to do that. He set his lap time and everybody else went out on the dry tyres. That was the wrong call. So then when they came into the pits then to fit on the intermediates, a lot of the drivers, like for example Ricciardo, it was left so late that the track got so wet that they couldn't set their laps. So it's worked in Ferrari's favour, but in this case it didn't work. So they went out, it didn't work for them. Hamilton and Bottas eventually then came around and then they set their lap times, as you can see here. So Hamilton was P1, Bottas was P2, and Verstappen came across the line. But the biggest problem here is that this wasn't just Raikkonen and Vettel's, the strategist's fault. Raikkonen here, as he said, his qualifying lap was in P4. Now, and Paul di Resta, again, I mean, I don't like him on commentary. I'm going to put it out there. I don't really like him. But he stated it perfectly. Ferrari were 90 seconds behind everybody else on the track. But Ferrari had the best of the conditions. They had the best ones. The track was not very drivable at the end of Q2. Q3 it was. Everyone had come along and set a lap time, and they provided a little bit. They put a tiny bit of rubber down. A little bit more grip was left on the track, so that Ferrari would basically last across the line. So they had the best of it, and it was the drivers that didn't make it work for them. So overall, you can say, I mean, you know, you've got Vettel here, just sort of, you know, he goes in towards Spoon Corner and he gets himself onto the curb. Raikkonen did the same thing, apart from Kimi was just eligible to go along. Vettel, not so much, and he ruined it. Ferrari did the wrong thing by putting them on the intermediate tyres, but that wasn't the reason that Ferrari's qualifying was ruined. The reason that Ferrari's qualifying was ruined is because both drivers, when it got down to business, didn't get the job done in their cars. They may have not been able to have got pole position. I'm not saying that they would have. You know, Mercedes looked very, very strong. And there's a potential that they wouldn't get it. But at the end of the day, Ferrari had an objective to get pole, and they didn't do it. And they had the track conditions in their favour. Now, yeah, it's difficult out there. But all of them would have been told that the track is dry, but the curbs are wet. So stay off the curbs, stay on the track, and you'll get your lap in. And they just carried a bit too much speed, tried to push hard. And when you push hard, this happens. And unfortunately, it happens, but it did. And then, of course, when they tried to go out again, then the rain fell a little bit harder. So in that circumstance, even Mercedes, they went straight out on the dries. They then came in, they set their laps, they came in, got another set of dries on, and they went straight out again. They still couldn't get a second lap in because it was wet. So everyone on the grid had one chance to get their laps right. Ferrari had one chance, and they didn't make it work for them. So you can't criticize the strategists in this scenario, because if it got to the point when they put on the dry tyres and then it was too wet, that's the strategist's fault. But in this circumstance, they still had a chance to get high up the grid, and they didn't do that. So in terms of the qualifying overview of what went wrong for Ferrari, it was their drivers, unfortunately. I can't really see why you'd blame their strategists for it. Yes, it meant that they had to sort of quick switch to dries and go out again, but you know, you live under this form of pressure, and it was the case of, yeah, you're going to get your lap in. There was no rain coming. Well, there was rain coming, but you had your chance to get a lap in. So from that circumstance, I don't really see anything wrong with Ferrari and their strategists on this one, which was funny because they've pretty much been the bane of Ferrari's life. But moving on now, so we're going now towards the race for the Grand Prix. And once again, I went onto my community post and I asked for a bunch of answers from some polls. Now, 99.9% of you were actually helpful in these polls, and there was that 0.1% of you who were stupid in everything that you say, with one person stating, how could I possibly even think of asking this question? I'm unsubscribing from your channel. It's just a question. You just answer yes or no. Where's the offense taken from that? And then someone just, I don't know, just said, bitch this, bitch that. I don't even know. It is what it is. At the end of the day, F1 fans are as toxic as ever, so I really don't care. But there we go. So the first one that I asked them was overall a very enjoyable Japanese Grand Prix with lots of drama and action. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Many polls to come as the debate gets going again. The first one was Verstappen's collision with Kimi Raikkonen. So that's actually, this is the collision with Vettel. I'm going to go into a bit more detail on that one. This is the one I want. Verstappen on Raikkonen. Did Verstappen deserve a penalty for it? I'm saying yes. So in this specific scenario, we're going to be talking about this one. And I'm going to go ahead and I want this one to be here. And I kind of actually want to go ahead and change it up a little bit. Not do that. I actually kind of want that. No, I want that. No, didn't want any of this. Okay, so I'm here after being a monumental numpty and not realising where the preview screen was. So I have now gone ahead. Yeah, I kind of want some of the most juiciest revolutions, but I don't really care, to be honest. It makes no difference to me. Yeah, just give me some of that. We'll get it as best as possible. So now, as you can see here, I'm in my preview screen, so I can go ahead and preview the whole thing. And I can pretty much cut this down 1/10 of a second by 1/10 of a second. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. So we're looking at the Verstappen versus Raikkonen incident, which is here on lap 1 of the Grand Prix. And it was between Kimi and Verstappen. So as you can see here, Max is by here, Kimi is by here. Now, Kimi was having a look at Verstappen going towards the chicane as he got a good run through 130R, and he tried to have a look. Now, Verstappen defended towards the inside line very briefly, and then he locked up and he went wide and missed the chicane, kind of. Now, as Verstappen missed the chicane, you can see here he locks up very so slightly. You can see the lock up of the smoke there. Raikkonen by here. I know the preview screen is very blurry. It always happens in editing softwares. They're just blurry. But as Raikkonen then goes to the attack here, you can see that Verstappen now has gone off. Is going off. So at this point here, Max is all but certain to cut the chicane. And at the end of the day, it wouldn't have meant that much. This was a little bit of a dull one from Verstappen. Now I give credit to Max. Because as he goes off onto the chicane, you can see here that he's now doing his best to get back on the track. He doesn't want to cut the chicane and gain an unfair advantage. But in this circumstance, I think he should have just, honestly, from when he had the opportunity, he should have gone from where he is now at the chicane. He should have just gone straight on and taken this little section down here and just slowed it a little bit. Give himself a compromise of some sort. But Verstappen, he decided to, even though he's gone off the track, he's going to try and rejoin the chicane and basically not really get a penalty for it in that sense. So he tried it. It didn't quite work out though. So as we speed it along, you can see here that Verstappen then, as he's going on towards the chicane, he gets himself back on again. Raikkonen's there on the outside. Now this is, a lot of people have been questioning, should Kimi Raikkonen have been there and should he have just like backed off, waited a little bit? Now, as Verstappen's coming on, at this point here, now you can see that he's trying to turn on. Kimi could have potentially, yes, he could have slowed down. Now, what he's done, Kimi, in fairness to Raikkonen, is look at the space that he's left for Verstappen. He's left a lot of room here. He's not compromising Verstappen. He's given him the space possible so that when Verstappen gets on, he can get back on the track. But what Kimi has also done, which he should have done, is he's left himself plenty of space for a switchback line. So when they come across, he just sort of, well, he sticks to the outsides. He's committed at this point. He's committed to going towards the outsides for his attack on Verstappen when really the switchback was on. If Verstappen is going to make this move, you just let him go across and then you can try and switch back. Now, the only difficulty with the switchback line, of course, in this circumstance, is Verstappen is right in your path. If he's still there, and if he's struggling and the back end's not getting in and he's not got enough speed, your switchback line is just going to go right into Verstappen's side pod. So actually, Raikkonen was clever in this circumstance, and going to the outside line, as much as people say, oh, just switch back, was the right decision. He can't try a switchback in this circumstance. He'd have to have a super slow entry. It'd be like a qualifying lap, you know, when we saw Hamilton sort of taking that really slow line. And then from here, as he got back onto the track, he made contact with Kimi Raikkonen, and Raikkonen's barge board on this side had damaged, and actually a bit of it came off. and Verstappen came off worse with a 5-second time penalty for rejoining the track unsafely. As we scroll further onwards and we go away from all this, the onboard is pretty much the best way of putting it. So as he comes across, you can see off the track, you can see the lockup there, and you can see that I can literally throw this down to just tenths of a second. Again, blurry screen though, but there's nothing I can do about that. As he comes onto the track here, he's turning, and in fairness to Verstappen, you can't like fault it. His wheel is turning. He's not like trying to be silly here. He's turning all the way. But the only difference here is at this point here, he's turning, and at this stage, he's got enough to pretty much give Raikkonen the curb and the green Astro paint, but it just got to a point where he just sort of closed it off, and you can see here that he's now opening up the wheel a little bit, and by this point, Raikkonen is still alongside him, and that's where the contact is made. So, for me, Verstappen deserved the 5-second time penalty for this. He did everything right in terms of what he was doing, in terms of, you know, going off the track. The only difference I felt was, if he cut the chicane and just slowed down, nothing would have actually come from it, because remember, Verstappen was chasing after Bottas in the second phase of the Grand Prix when Bottas's tyre was blistered. And in that scenario, Bottas locked up and he just went off into the chicane. Now, it was a lot further back in terms of distance, so there was no, like, he's having a little look there, but even if Verstappen went off of the chicane, there would be no form of, you need to give the place to Raikkonen, or there's going to be a time penalty for it, because in that circumstance, he wasn't alongside him, and it would have been the exact same scenario if we go back to Italy. Bottas had a really late lunge on Verstappen, was never going to make the move stick. Verstappen locked up and just cut the chicane, but he went straight on and just carried on his way, and that's when he was told then, that is your joker. He could have just used a joker there and gone across, but he did what he had to, and then as he comes across into the chicane here, Raikkonen's alongside at this point. He's then just opens up the steering wheel, I think just a little bit too much for me, and that's where the contact lies. You can see it again, the steering wheel is opening up, and at this point, you know, he's given Raikkonen a bit of a hit. Maybe he couldn't have potentially done any more than that, who knows, but I do think the blame is placed at Verstappen on that one. But I think that's the Verstappen-Vettel incident. Oh, nope, that's actually part 2 of it. But anyway, moving on away from that then, so let's have a look at some of your comments then for the Verstappen-Raikkonen incident, how you personally felt about this one. So the first one comes in from Typical Guy, and he states that Verstappen's penalty was actually unfair, and it was the most liked comment out of all of them. So he says, in my opinion, I feel like Verstappen just understeered as he tried to turn left, but couldn't. Bearing in mind there was a lot of fuel on board, and Kimi could have stopped if he wanted to. But then again, it's probably Verstappen's responsibility to get a safe exit to return on the track. So it could go either way. The race was pretty good. Shame for Charles Leclerc. Magnussen, big Magnussen again, facepalm emoji. Yes, Magnussen is, as usual, the most dirtiest driver on the grid. But this one's kind of good, actually. We don't really know the circumstances, but because this corner is such a slow-speed chicane, you kind of have to think, was there really any form of understeer going on here? Potentially, you never know. And at the end of the day, he's given himself a tight line. Like, he's trying to turn from here in a full 90 degrees. So, in some senses, yeah, he's got a tight line to get there. So, I think overall, though, he should have just maybe cut the chicane, but sort of gone off maybe and just avoided this curbing section and just given himself a little bit of leeway. But sometimes in the heat of the moment, and especially in racing, you've only got one chance to make a decision. So you've got to do one thing, otherwise that one thing is going to go wrong. Next up then comes from Milos Bara, who states Verstappen's penalty was fair. Simple response of Max didn't rejoin the track safely. It's kind of true. Wasn't really as safe as it could potentially have been. Got another one saying it was fair. Filippo Guen... Oh, I can't pronounce names. Guidone, you know who you are. I pronounce it. I'm just going to call you Flippo, because Flippo is easy to pronounce. Or it's Filippo. I can't even do that right. I can't do anything right. Filippo, I'm sorry. Verstappen's penalty was fair. Always turns mad when he sees the red card, this boy. I think he's a little bit frustrated that Verstappen hit the Ferrari. But anyway, Verstappen's penalty was unfair from Wessel, and he says if he cut the corner more, he would have gotten a penalty for that. So what could he have done? Wouldn't have got a penalty. Raikkonen again, he was not attempting. If we go towards the start of the clip here, right here, you can see that Verstappen is in front. Raikkonen's not going for an overtake there. Verstappen has track position. He would be gaining an advantage by cutting the chicane, but he wouldn't have corner cut and gained a position from doing so. It wouldn't have been a penalty. It would have been a joker. Very much the exact same as Bottas in Italy for that one. So there was different options, but when you make one option, you can't. You have to think on your feet. And in racing, sometimes, you know, things like that do happen. A couple more to go through then. I'll go through a few more. Next one from Danny, he says, saw this one live. I mean, he returned to the racing line and Kimi also wanted that racing line. As a Verstappen fan, his penalty was fair as he should have let Raikkonen through. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, in that circumstance, you know, you never really want to let your racing driver through, but when you make a mistake and he's alongside, there is some space that needs to be warranted. And I think overall, that's pretty much that. I'm going to go through and find a few more. Let's have a look here. So this one is from Boron. I know, B-J-O-R-N. I know who you are because you've commented before. This is actually a very strong one. And he does definitely state very, very strong opinions. And there's nothing wrong with that. Firstly, what else could he have done? Waited for the entire field to pass? Question mark. And second, do you all hate him or something? Every time Verstappen gets a penalty, you make a poll and everybody starts hating on him. I'm not a fan of him. What a fan of Verstappen. I don't make a poll on everything Verstappen because he makes incidents. I'm just making a poll because this was the main talking point for the race. That's why I was making a poll. In terms of waiting for the entire field to pass, he's not going to let the whole field go past. Anyway, Verstappen is a driver that if you want to overtake him, you're going to have to get your elbows out to do it. I just felt that he just didn't leave enough space. And no one's hating on someone for stating their opinion. And this is the same thing. In these polls, there's the final one that I'll go through now. It's a very, very controversial poll, but at the end of the day, it's just an opinion. If you don't like the opinion, then just state your opinion and say, well, this is mine. I don't care about your opinion. This is my opinion. I'm putting it down, and I feel happy that I put it down. And this is why the debate is here. Just to say, oh, look, you've said that Verstappen was cheating and that he smashed into Raikkonen, but I don't agree with that. I want to put my opinion down. This is how I feel of it. And that's that. You end the debate right there in terms of that section. So yeah, next one then, this one I wanted to put in. This comes from two people, from Gills Games and also McClavgin. Again, don't know my names right. But the first one is, I think a 3-second time penalty would be fair. And then again, maybe a 3-second time penalty, but he tried to keep his car on track and Raikkonen could have chosen another line because he saw Verstappen lock up. These two ones, I don't believe they give out 3-second time penalties anymore for these type of incidents. A 5-second penalty is the most lenient. We only really see 3-second time penalties in Formula 1 games, so I don't believe they do that anymore. Maybe they have done, but in this circumstances, any form of like collision-y styles, it goes, you know, 5-second time penalty, 10-second drive-through disqualification. I think they're how it goes. But moving on then, away from that one, it's now over towards the next incident, and it was between, well, you guessed it, Vettel and Verstappen. We're going to go over to my preview screen, we're going to go over towards this one, and it's Vettel versus Max in towards Spoon Corner. Who was at fault? Why were they at fault? Who's being a bunch of plebs today? So, we're having a look at this now. I mean, 60 FPS isn't going to make that much of a difference on a preview screen. But anyway, as we can see then, so we've got Vettel and Verstappen going at it now. The reason that Vettel got to this point, now Verstappen was clearly harvesting energy at this point. Vettel clearly wasn't harvesting energy. He was depleting his battery. And heading towards Spoon Corner, he got a very good run and decided to move out against Max Verstappen. However, I feel that this was a little bit too late to make his move. But at the end of the day, he goes for it. So, in towards the corner, contact is made, Vettel goes round, Verstappen gets whacked and he goes super wide, goes back onto the track, Vettel worst out of it. Very, 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 very similar to Italy once again with Vettel versus Hamilton. When Hamilton was on the outside, Vettel went to the inside, they made contact and it was Vettel that spun round. Same scenario right here, but I'm going to be going through some of yours first. So I actually released a poll, number 2, right here. For the debate, so Verstappen's crash with Vettel, who was at fault? For me, I placed this one on Vettel, and I still stick by that. For me, Max gave room and he made his attempt too late and understeered into him. However, in terms of like a penalty given, I don't think Vettel should have got any form of penalty from it, which he didn't. But for me, the penalty for Vettel was what you can see here. He's backwards and the entire field is going past. So if you give him like a 5-second time penalty, what's the point? He's lost a hell of a lot of time just by spinning around. So overall then, so we had Verstappen's fault and should have had a penalty. 12% of you voted for that one. This is out of 3,500 votes. So again, I appreciate all of you guys for voting. Verstappen's fault, but no penalty. Only 3% of you voted for that one. Vettel's fault, and he should have had a penalty, won the poll with 33%. So you guys felt that it was Vettel's fault, but he should have had a penalty for it as well. Vettel's fault, but no penalty, 28% of you. And it was a racing incident, no one was at fault. That was 24% of you that voted for that one. So we're going to have a look then at the top comments and see what you guys went with. So if it loads up for me now, I'd love to see it. There we go. Right, so we've got here, Vettel's fault, no penalty, from Goldver, and he says his penalty was his spin. It's just true. Fair enough. His penalty was his spin. So that's kind of that one. Next one then, well, this is what I mean. This is from Alessandro, who says, fuck you, bitch, Foxy298, fuck you. What does that help with? In which my response, crying, laughing face emoji. What did I do? Cause the collision. Crying, laughing face emoji. Literally just stated, here is the second poll. What do you guys think? Why am I now? I feel like I'm Verstappen at this point. This is what I mean by toxic F1 fans. I get hate because I asked the question as a poll. Okay. Anyway, I appreciate that he got one like on his comment though. It's probably himself, and then you got 15 of the Supreme Leader Army liking my post because it's pretty much true. Anyway, next up then, this one comes from Anthony Man 49, and he states here that it was Vettel's fault and should have had a penalty. As Max described it, it was similar to the incident in China last year. Max tried to overtake Seb, but ended up hitting him, and he got a 10-second penalty. The difference for me in this one was that Verstappen didn't lose anything. Whereas in China, Verstappen not only spun himself round, but he spun Vettel round. So, in terms of the scenario, let's analyse the whole situation first. There's Vettel being upset. Now, I'm going to go ahead and have a look at them afterwards. But anyway, you can see here that Vettel's got a very, very good closing speed on Max heading in towards Spoon. You can see, I don't think it'll show, does it show Verstappen's light? There it is, right there. Stop, I cut there. That's Verstappen's rear lights. Now, if you guys are unaware of the lights that work on this, when it's raining, this is obviously the rain light, so they can see through the spray. But at this specific point here, the light also in the dry, this is warning the drivers behind, e.g. Vettel, that this man is harvesting his energy, his battery deployment, and he's going to be slower. So at this point, Verstappen is harvesting his battery. Vettel's obviously going to be using all of it to get past Verstappen. Now, he made an overtake on Grosjean, but Grosjean's not in the fight with Vettel, so why would he go for it? And in this circumstance, Verstappen's using his battery. As he goes now towards the attack, he makes a very late decision here to attack Verstappen. He's carrying a lot of speed, but this is the problem. In towards Spoon, well, first of all, there's two things. You've got a very tight line in towards a high-speed corner, and you've got a Red Bull that's not exactly going to be that lenient on the attack. So as he comes on through here, as he makes his turn in towards the corner, he's taking the curb, but I think the problem here is Verstappen is sort of leaving some room, leaving it, they're turning, and actually, come to look at this on second view, someone said that Verstappen turned in on Vettel. Potentially. Anyway, so let's have a look here. So we'll leave it onto there, and we'll go back to some of your comments. So this one next up from Heckenberger. Says, just a racing incident, no one at fault. Just a racing incident, in a split second, such things happen. Vettel went a bit wide and tapped Verstappen, who was staying on the racing line, and who tried to squeeze Vettel a bit off. It's so easy to give someone the fault if you have ages to look at it. They have less than a second. That's actually perfectly stated. That's a really solid answer there. He's got that spot on. In that instant moment, that's a 10th. Right there, if I just play that normally, from here, like he says it there, less than a second. So what are we on now? 23 seconds dead. We go towards this corner. This is slowed down a little bit. Boom. That's 25.6. That's 2.6 seconds from there. And that's probably slowed down as well because of the replay. 2.6 seconds of making an overtake, bam, slap, spun round. Perfectly stated, that one. But anyway, let's keep it there. I kind of want a different one. Joe Millen says, how is this even a debate? Verstappen gave enough room. Vettel's fault, should have had a penalty. I mean, if you look at it, there's tight room here. There's not a lot. But at the end of the day, there's in Formula 1, the rule is simple. You've got to give a car's width to a driver when they're attacking. There's the car. There's your width. Room's there. I want to find one when someone says Verstappen should have had a penalty. Where's the Verstappen should have had a penalty? There's a lot of people commenting regards to this comment. Here we go. We got 2 here. I'm going to go for these ones. Alright, so Verstappen's fault should have had a penalty from Vittorio. He says he literally changes his trajectory in the last second. Vettel was already inside. Well, let's have a look at the trajectory change then. So, as you can see here, Vettel's now making his move over towards the inside line. Verstappen is providing alongside. And at this point here, the collision is now made. Now, here you can see that in some senses, there is a slightly fair point because Verstappen is turning at this section. Vettel here has got enough width. But of course, the difference is why is Vettel now at this point? Vettel is carrying more speed in towards Spoon. Now, it's very easy, and I literally was when looking at this now, it's very easy to say that Verstappen was turning again. Vettel is carrying more speed into Spoon, so at this point, there's not a lot wrong. They've given each other plenty of room that you can see here. Vettel's got his space, Verstappen's got his space, but when the initial first contact is made between tyre to tyre, Vettel's tyre has hit Verstappen's tyre. Vettel is carrying way too much speed into Spoon Corner compared to what Max was carrying. And when you're on the inside line, if you're going to go for a high-speed corner like that, Vettel really wants to have this line and go all the way around the outside. He's not going to get that. And in some circumstances, you've just got to wait. And he said it on the radio, which was just a bit cheesy, trying to make himself feel sorry in a way. In terms of, if I didn't go for the gap, then I should have just gone home. And it's a very, very strong point. But again, yeah, okay, I'll go for the gap. Oh no, the gap might... I don't think I'm going to get through here. This is a championship at stake. Let's just back out. I'm going to go for this gap. Right, gap's not going to work. I'm in a Ferrari car. I'm in a Ferrari, which is faster than a Red Bull, versus a Renault power unit. I'll just back out, get a nice clean line out of Spoon, get him up towards 130R. If I don't get him on the chicane, get him with DRS, whatever. People were saying, why don't you just wait till he's had his pit stop? The Mercedes could have just ran away at that point. So really, you have to go for it quite early. But at this point, he's just carried too much into Spoon. You can you say, oh no, Verstappen's turning in on me. But Vettel is carrying just too much into there. And that's why the front face of Vettel's tyre has collided with the rear face of Verstappen's front tyre. Because that understeer trajectory is there. So it's very hard to blame Verstappen. Now sure, Vettel made overtakes on everybody else going towards Spoon Corner. But that's because they just weren't in a fight with him. Grosjean's not in a fight with Vettel. And everyone else that he made a move on, he moved out and positioned his car a lot better. And also, the second thing is Verstappen is fighting Vettel. He doesn't care anymore. The Red Bull is competitive car. So if you're going to overtake Verstappen, you've got to do it wisely. So that's what I think of it. Next one then. This one comes from Spezatura, I think. And he says, Verstappen's fault. Sebastian was already going down the inside, and yes, Verstappen did leave a car's width, but then he turns inwards at the last second, and Seb has nowhere to go except Verstappen's car. I am a Ferrari fan, but I'm saying this as an F1 and a racing fan. I mean, yeah, he's down the inside, but there's no late turning. He's turning. There's an understeer section coming in now, and front face to that face. And at this point here, Vettel's just going faster at that point. And there's where the contact is made from a different perspective. Let's go to see if Verstappen's point of view is on any of this. It kind of is. Moving, he's turning. As he moves his wheel over, 16 seconds, sort of just, he's there. He's still leaving the exact same room as he always has done. He's not necessarily, in fairness to Verstappen, he's given Vettel a tight line going in towards Spoon. But he's given him enough of a space in towards Spoon Corner. And at the end of the day, when you saw it from everyone else's perspectives, when they were going across, they were always going on the outside and they were just sort of lifting off. We saw it even with Grosjean. But Verstappen is defending in towards Spoon. And yeah, Vettel's got nowhere else to go but Verstappen's car. But when a move is like that and it's not on and you've got a driver that is defending, now look, you can see right there, he is giving very minimal room. I can respect that, but then if you go to Vettel's POV and go forward and back onwards from that, you can see right here that he's got the space in towards Spoon that he requires, that car's width. Yeah, because he's got a bit of the car on the curb, but I just don't think this is enough warrant in terms of positioning. Like, Verstappen is going to defend. At this point here, there's not a lot Vettel can do. Vettel made the right decision in going for the move, because if he doesn't, well, he's just going to go into the rear of Verstappen's car because he's carrying the speed. This is what's caused Vettel to go for it because of the extra momentum and speed that he's taking. And eventually, as he goes in towards this corner, this point here is when Vettel made the wrong decision. He's now at this point, Verstappen is going defensive. Just lift off, let Verstappen go out, because at some points, Max might still think that he's there and the understeer could potentially still be there, and you can still switch it on the second part of Spoon. But it didn't happen, and contact was unfortunately made between the two. And then again, if we just compare this one to Romain Grosjean when he was having his little fight with Vettel as well in the Grand Prix, as they're attacking here, you can see Vettel is moving over, but as you can see, I mean, this is on the outside, which is different, but you can see here, Grosjean, again, he's not fighting him, so Vettel just goes around the outside, but he moves over much earlier, and you can see it there, whereas with Verstappen, it was literally coming up towards the run for it, and then, of course, it goes from there, and that's where the collisions are made, and that's pretty much where it stands on that one. A lot of you guys, they were pretty much stating, they were the very few ones that I saw that were actually talking about Verstappen's fault and should have had a penalty, but pretty much everyone was talking about it being either a racing incident or Vettel's fault, but no penalty, stating that he should have, his penalty was, well, spinning off and going into nowhere. So that was pretty much that. After the race as well, Vettel did go ahead and he still blames Verstappen for it. But at that point, you know, you're not, I don't know, like, I think he's just got frustrated in the end. I don't really see where he's blaming Verstappen. He's saying, you know, look, where does he expect me to go? But at the end of the day, when you're defending in a high-speed corner, he gave a car's width, and if you're going to carry extra speed in towards the corner, you will understeer into another person's car, so you've just got to back out of it sometimes. And when it comes to defending, it's not that easy to get past Verstappen. Just go back to Hamilton versus Verstappen at China. You know, Max tried to go around the outside of Hamilton, and he didn't back out of it, and it was very audacious overtake, and, well, he went wide after that. And then from there, of course, that was kind of that. So that's really where Ferrari went wrong. And overall, this year, Ferrari it's weird because Vettel has got one less point than what he had last year in 2017. And I still stand by it. In 2017, Mercedes had the most dominant car on the field. Yes, Ferrari had caught up drastically and it was a close fight, but Mercedes had much better straight line speed. Their chassis was so-so and their aero was all right. And only in the difficult downforce heavy circuits did Mercedes struggle. They struggled in Singapore, but they won. They struggled in Hungary, and they were beaten, I believe. I think so. Were they beaten in Hungary? Yeah, they were. They were beaten. It was a 1-2 for Ferrari. And they were beaten in Monaco. And they were the times when they lost. And in terms of Red Bull's victories, well, Verstappen got the victory in Malaysia because Red Bull was just faster on that day than Mercedes-Benz. And in Mexico, again, Red Bull just had a better car because the Mercedes power unit wasn't as effective because you're so high up that the air is a lot thinner. So Mercedes had the best car. This year, especially all the way up till Monza, Ferrari have had, for me, the fastest car on the grid. And they haven't capitalised on it. And Mercedes have, as much as we've been annoyed about some of Mercedes' tactics in the past, the best way to summarise this season for me is Ferrari have had the best car on the grid, but Mercedes has been the best team on the grid. And that's like a statement. Ferrari had been doing team tactics very well at the start of the season. Go back to Melbourne, Vettel and Raikkonen played the 2-on-1 game against Hamilton. They pitted Raikkonen early, Hamilton responded to that, Vettel just stayed out for as long as he could. Boom, a safety car came out, there you go, pit Vettel, he's in front of Hamilton. It's a bit of a software error on Mercedes' path. Tough luck, you know, Ferrari played a 2-on-1 and you got outbeaten, you got done. Bahrain, Vettel controlled the race brilliantly, showed amazing confidence on those tyres, and he stayed on them. And you've got other circumstances where the pendulums swing the other way. You know, Hamilton locked up in Azerbaijan, pitted because he flat spotted his tyres. Vettel responded, Bottas just stayed out as long as he could. Boom, safety car, Bottas pits, he's in front. Vettel locks up and makes a mistake. And this is where the problems lie. It's been a big mixture of Vettel's mistakes and Verstappen just, and Ferrari's strategists just getting it wrong. And again, you know, Mercedes have been using their team order scenario much more efficiently. In Germany, go back to it, you know, Vettel was quicker than Raikkonen, and Ferrari just took way too long. You've just got to stay straight there and then. Look, Kimi, let Vettel through. He's faster than you. We want to win this race. They let him through, but Vettel crashed, and that's his own fault then. And then you go to, what is it, Germany for Mercedes. Again, team order things, we've gone into that. But for me, the only times that Mercedes have really been super strong compared to Ferrari was at the tracks where they had the quote-unquote special tyres. Of course, in what was it? In Spain, they used these new type of tyres to stop blistering. Mercedes just worked better on them, and they had a better understanding on those tyres than they did on the other ones. In France, same scenario. They won there. In Silverstone, they didn't win there, but Hamilton was probably a little bit faster than Seb. But we don't know that, do we? Because Hamilton obviously had the engine up, and it was a great fight there. In Germany, of course, Hamilton just won a crazy race. And in Hungary, you know, even though Mercedes won, it was just a difficult track to overtake on, and they had track position because of qualifying. And ever since Monza, you know, Ferrari again, they just haven't been playing good as a team at all. In Monza, you know, it was a 2-on-1 in Monza. It was from the start. Bottas didn't have enough pace in Monza. He was stuck behind Verstappen the whole race in a Red Bull. And it was basically Hamilton versus the two Ferraris. And Vettel, once again, got greedy trying to overtake Raikkonen, got done around the outside by Hamilton. And sure, you'd say, oh, where's Vettel supposed to go? Because he's got Hamilton there. Let's go and have a look at the Raikkonen-Hamilton overtake. Raikkonen went around the outside of Hamilton. Same scenario, but Hamilton just backed off. Just let Raikkonen through. It's like, right, I accept that. And that's what Vettel isn't quite getting used to this year. He's not quite accepting when a move is done on his behalf. And yeah, let's face it, we all criticise Ferrari strategies and Ferrari genuinely, and Hamilton put out a very strong Instagram post today defending Sebastian, saying, you know, at the level that we play at, you know, you are going to have mistakes, and humans make mistakes, and sure, they do. In a World Championship, however, in terms of that scenario, there are some times when mistakes cost you championships, and they cost you, and Ferrari, for me, should be well ahead in the championship. If Vettel didn't crash in Germany, that's 25 points in the bag. If Vettel didn't make a mistake in Italy and just bided his time, let Hamilton through, get him on the attack again, it would have been a 2-on-1 attack, and Ferrari could have played the team game. Whereas this time, Vettel was out of the equation. They used Bottas as a bit of a blockade for Kimi Raikkonen in Italy. That wasn't just to hold up Kimi Raikkonen, because Bottas was still setting personal best laps and doing what he needed to do for his race. There you go. And again, if he didn't crash into Bottas in France, Vettel now, if he didn't lock up in Azerbaijan, would have maybe got the overtake done and got a win there. And again, you know, you go to Hungary, you know, they didn't get it right in qualifying. Again, they just weren't as quick in the wet. Vettel didn't, the Ferrari strategy got it wrong for him in that race. He would have been in front of Bottas, could have chased down Hamilton. Would he overtaken him? Who knows? And there's just so many scenarios that you can pick out. I mean, in Spa, he was brilliant in Spa. In Monza, it didn't work out for him. In Singapore, the strategy was simple. Get him on the ultra soft tyres, get the undercut on Lewis Hamilton, get past him, mix up the strategy, mix up the race. That didn't work because they got him out behind Perez. Vettel couldn't get past Perez. And then we go to Japan. He makes them in Sochi, they just weren't quick enough. And then in Japan, you've got a mistake in Spoon in qualifying and a mistake at Spoon in the race when he should have just backed down Verstappen. So it's just been too many mistakes from Ferrari this year. It's just been way too many, and I love Ferrari as a team, you know. I don't hate Ferrari. I don't hate anyone, apart from Haas, really. I don't really like Haas at all. But I don't hate Ferrari, and the fact that they haven't won since 2008 in terms of constructors now, Drivers' Championship 2007, this has been their best year so far, and they've had a really quick car. And I felt that if Vettel just waited on Verstappen, Vettel is much faster than Kimi Raikkonen, and I'm sorry, he's much better than Raikkonen in a Ferrari car this season from when Vettel and Raikkonen have been teammates. And I think he would have overtaken Bottas, and I think he could have potentially won that race. He could have done it. But there's so many hindsights in Formula 1. But for me, I just think overall, like I've said, Vettel, he's just made way too many mistakes. And yeah, the strategists haven't exactly helped with that. And then I decided to put out this one, just as a really controversial post overall. And that was, does Vettel actually deserve to be at Ferrari anymore? I actually said, I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, you can't take away what Vettel's achieved in Formula 1. A 4-time world champion in a Red Bull car that was dominant for 2 years and very, very closely matched for the other two. In 2010, I don't think that Vettel was in a powerful Red Bull. he wasn't leading the championship going into the final race. That was Alonso's bottle and Ferrari's strategical bottle. Just thinking about that now. Because they got him out behind Petrov and he couldn't get past him. Ferrari's bottle. Oh dear. And then we've got, once again, the same situation where it was... it's just, you know, in 2011, it was a dominant car. 2012 wasn't as dominant. And then 2013, you know, was just insanely dominant. But overall, after saying this, pretty much I got a few responses. Some of them were a bit rude, but most of them were okay. First of all, from Philip says, yes, he does deserve to drive Ferrari. He's a great driver, and not winning the championship is not only about him. It is, I think, 30% because Lewis is very strong at driving and psychologically thinks. 20% because he made fails off of only being because of the team, and they're 100% behind him. And they don't use Kimi like Mercedes do with Bottas. That is true, but at the end of the day, you know, if you're not in a championship fight, you've got to do something about it. So, for me, I feel like... Again, Mercedes, they use Bottas, but they've been playing as a team much, much better. 30% Ferrari as itself, and I don't mean the strategy guys, for an example. They don't really use young and fresh people in their team. 10% because of other drivers hitting him, like Verstappen in China. True that. And 10% himself. I think it's a little bit low, but of course you can defend it your own way. I mean, there's a lot of mistakes that he's made. He's a great driver, and all people can make mistakes. Some people often forget that they're only people too. I mean, that's a fair point. In that situation, I kind of just wanted to see what reactions people would get, but that's pretty much very, very good there. Ferrari cannot blame Vettel, as although he made mistakes, Ferrari's strategy screwed up both of their drivers. But again, yeah, they've messed up their drivers, but then there's been so many mistakes where they could have got much, much more, but they didn't. It's just a bit frustrating, that's all. I think he should be tested or rested for the rest of the season. I would like to see Hamilton in the Ferrari and Vettel in the Mercedes to see how much the car affects the result. If that was the case, you'd probably see them both not performing as well because they don't really know each other's cars. But maybe, who knows? I'm honestly on the fence. I prefer him over Hamilton, but he makes too many mistakes. I don't know anymore. So he consistently is making mistakes in the races, or what could have been a great result. Take Germany, for example. He had the potential to win, threw it away. Vettel's skills are not as consistent like Hamilton, and he must focus hard to keep his head down if he wants to win the Drivers' Championship. Chances seem unlikely, but I would love to see him proven wrong and see some surprise twists happening. We've got one here. 3 words. Too many mistakes. And we got, you know, Ferrari have made many mistakes as him in this season in terms of strategy. If Ferrari didn't mess up in qualifying, tyre strategy, then Vettel would never been in that position. So maybe this season should be forgotten and they shall forgive each other. So pretty much a couple of yeses, pretty much a couple of no's for that. But guys, that's pretty much going to end it for the debate for today. We pretty much explained what's gone wrong with Ferrari in Japan and pretty much given an overview of this season as well. It's just been a season of just too many mistakes and basically a season of what could have been for Ferrari. But next race, we've got the US Grand Prix. If Hamilton wins the Grand Prix and Vettel finishes 3rd or lower, Hamilton will win the World Drivers' Championship for a 5th time. Obviously, this is a track where Hamilton has dominated. He's won here in every race apart from 2013. He won in 2012, 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017. So he's won 5 times already at Austin. And he also won in 2007 at Indianapolis. So this is a track which Mercedes love. It's a track that Hamilton loves, and we can't wait to see it. I love the US Grand Prix. It's going to be great. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. And again, if you've got any more things to point out, let me know in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys next time. Take care all. Peace.